Holy cow, everybody. It's been 39 minutes. We're running late. I'm so sorry. My gosh, it's episode number 45 of Into the Fire. And hopefully, and I say hopefully, we'll be able to get the legendary Billy Queen on. He's older than I am, and believe me, between the both of us, we're probably a couple of computer illiterates. That's why we have Amanda behind the scenes. And Amanda is awesome, and she's working very hard on it. And so thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. If you, this is episode number 45 coming to you live right now, a little late, but we're going to make up for that. We don't really have a restriction. So if you have to tune off because of the time or whatever, just remember that we're live right now. We'll continue to go as long as Billy will stand it and so forth. And I see that the debrief with Tyler Burns is in the house. I was on his podcast. Gosh, I was on there at least a Sunday or 2 Sundays ago. And so you can check that out. I'm going to give him a plug. And it's the debrief with Tyler Burns. You could go to my playlist on my YouTube page, Detective Jason White. That's how you find my YouTube page. And you can find many of the previous episodes on there. And like I said, I appreciate everybody being in here, and I appreciate your patience. I'm really, really optimistic that we're going to be able to get going with this episode tonight. And I have to tell you something. Billy is somebody that I'm going to be hanging out with him next week. I'm going to have dinner with him Sunday night in another state in an undisclosed location, and we're going to be hanging out together. And Billy might have to owe me a beer or two, and then I'll buy him a couple. But we'll have him on here. He's a true legend. This guy, Jay Dobbins. A lot of people. I've been talking to some of the people behind the scenes here in the chat, the little chat, and these are the faithful followers. I heard somebody say in there that they're the posse. They're definitely my OGs, the OG followers, and I appreciate you guys hanging out. And somebody had mentioned something about, hey, you should get Jay Dobbins on here. And if you don't know who Jay Dobbins is an individual that actually infiltrated the Hells Angels and actually had his house burnt down by who knows. They never solved that case. And yeah, I'm working on that. I'm working on a lot of different people. I had mentioned to some others behind the scenes too. Next week, I will not have a live episode, and I will not have a live one the week after. We're going to do 2 reruns because I'm going to be on assignment in other places. I'm going to be other places, and I won't be able to bring you live content. So next week we're going to re-air Ashley Berg, and Ashley Berg is a world-renowned crime scene detective from the great state of Texas, and we're going to re-air hers. And then the next week we're going to re-air Kathy Kleiner's episode. And Kathy Kleiner, just to remind you guys, she is one of Ted Bundy's victims, and she survived the Chi Omega sorority attack. And thank heavens that a car pulled into the driveway at that sorority house because she and her roommate were able to escape with their lives. And she's got a very, very incredible story. And Kathy actually just recently published that book. I saw the manuscript of it. She had sent me a manuscript of it, and she has since published it. And I need to get a copy of that. I need to get with Kathy, and I need to get a copy of that. But I will tell you that tonight, Billy Queen, I'd heard some people talk about this book. Let me tell you, if you go on Amazon, you can get one of these if you choose to. Billy Queen's been on a bunch of different TV shows and stuff. I am going to go ahead and run through his bio real quick since we've got the time. I don't want to take time if he jumps on here. And hopefully we're going to feature him tonight. He is a real legend. Billy Queen was raised in North Carolina. He's the son of an ATF agent. He served as a Special Forces soldier in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. And after leaving the military, he served as a police officer in North Carolina for 6 years. Then became an agent with the U.S. Border Patrol, where he served for 2 years before joining the ATF. I've heard Billy talk about it, that the time in the Border Patrol and his training there was tougher than any of the places that he had trained before. So that ought to be interesting to talk to him about that. Early operations included infiltrating the Aryan Nation and the KKK. Then in early 1998, as part of the operation to infiltrate motorcycle gangs, he joined the San Fernando Valley chapter of the Mongols Motorcycle Club, and his name in the club was Billy St. John. And he became a full patch member where he served for 28 months. Billy was incredibly successful in his undercover operation within the ranks of bikers, and after receiving his full patch member status, elevated to hold the position of secretary treasurer. And get this, he actually became the chapter's vice president as well. And this is an ATF agent, ladies and gentlemen, that actually became the vice president of a Mongols chapter. This led to a series of raids that were carried out on May 19th of 2000 to include almost 700 lawmen in 4 states, which led to the arrest and indictment of 54 gang members. The ATF later described Queen's time undercover as its most successful biker gang penetration. I'll say, and there's been some others like Jay that I mentioned earlier. He has received multiple awards, and following his retirement, Billy wrote a book called Under and Alone, the true story of an undercover agent who infiltrated America's most violent outlaw motorcycle gang. The book became a bestseller upon its release in 2005. And I'm gonna steal Jay Dobbins' little quote. I saw Jay Dobbins talking on another podcast, and this is what Jay said, and I loved it. It has been said that if you were to put together a Mount Rushmore of undercover agents, Billy would certainly be one of the legends on the mountain. And I completely agree with that. And so I love it. I'll tell you something, just for the listeners here. The undercover, I worked undercover for a couple of years, and it is not, we don't work undercover like this, like they did. I mean, Billy was living it with these guys, and he was doing his thing, and it came at great personal expense to his personal life. And I think that if, hopefully we're going to be able to get there and he's going to be able to talk about it. But Billy had to, he's been asked many times, would you do it again? And I can tell you right now that Billy would not do this again. So that's what we're hoping to get to, and I really am excited to try to talk to him about that. And we're not quite there, but we're getting there. So once again, those are going to be next week. It's going to be a re-air of Ashley Berg, Crime Scene Extraordinaire. And then the next week after that is going to be Kathy Kleiner, who I'm a huge fan of. I love Kathy. She's a dear friend of mine now. And then the next week, this is going to be a big surprise, but I'm going to let you know what it is since I owe it to you to not keep it a secret because we're waiting here. But it's going to be an OG of the first 48. We're talking about back old school from one of the original cities, and that's going to be Miami. And we're going to bring in Freddie Ponce, retired detective Freddie Ponce from the Miami homicide crew. And Freddie is not Freddie Ponce. It's actually Freddie Ponce, PhD. I mean, this guy has actually taken his world to a whole nother level, and he teaches, and he's got his own company, and Freddie is one heck of an entertaining guy. He's a Cuban detective, and he's just an interesting, man, the guy's just he's going to be a lot of fun to have on here. And I don't think we're going to have a time constraint on that one either. We've kind of loosened it up a little bit because we don't necessarily have a show directly behind us. And I will remind everybody on here, thank you again for being faithful viewers and watchers and listeners and so forth, because with all of the different various platforms that exist out there, I'll tell you right now, we're number one in the true crime section. And of KGRA digital broadcasting, not across the board, but there. And if you wonder what I'm looking at, this is kind of what I've got in the background. You can't really see because of the glare, but I'll tell you what, I'm looking at the screen. I've got a screen in front of me just to kind of give you an idea. And I've also got a computer over to my right just to kind of let you know that's how I'm able to kind of see what the posts are and the comments and stuff like that. And for me to type to respond, that's what I'm doing. I'm going over here and I'm kind of typing things. Also, I'll tell you, we're kind of exploring a little bit about maybe coming up with some ideas for some coffee cups and I don't know, maybe hats, coffee cups, things like that are fun. And and cool. I like cool, and I want some stuff that's going to be really neat, and hopefully we're going to be able to get that out in the near future. I'm just not quite crazy about. We might end up changing the name of the show entirely and just changing everything up. I've kind of considered that. We're floating some ideas around, and that's for later on. I don't know if we're ultimately going to do that or not, but that's something that we're kind of toying with, and maybe we'll do that. And if we do that, it's going to be well. We do need some Into the Fire merchandise, but if we're going to change it, man, if we're going to change, I know you're going to buy something, Tyler, because uh, I need you to buy something. I need you to buy something, and that would be great. And like I said, if you haven't checked out his podcast, check it out. Tyler Burns is he's up there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he started up his podcast. He's probably on episode 29 or 30, somewhere in that vicinity, and you could check his out. I don't know if Billy's got one or not. I think Billy has. I don't know if he's got one or not. I don't remember if he does or not. But some of these other people that I'm going to be bringing on, they've actually done some stuff with some other podcasts as well. I do have a couple of other first 48 OGs that I'm going to bring on here. That I'm kind of talking with one of them. I'm trying to twist his arm and bring him on here, but of course I'm bringing on first 48 detectives that I actually was fans of. That I have to be fans of them. I have to like them too, So. And I want you to be dazzled. And so one of them is going to be somebody, I'm not going to mention who it is, but it's going to be somebody from Tucson, Arizona. And they spent some time on the show. And then there's also going to be another detective. And this guy, you talk about entertaining. And this guy is from Cincinnati. And that's another old school city as well. And I thought it would be fun to reach out to some of these older guys and gals. I'm not opposed to bringing a gal on. We got to get one on here. And then, and other than Summer, because Summer's awesome. By the way, I have to tell you this too. I'll be hanging out with, not only will I be hanging out with Billy this week, but I'm actually going to be hanging out with Summer Benton too. So it'll be my first time. I've known Summer for the last few years, and I communicate with her off and on. But I'm actually going to be hanging out with her. I'm going to be meeting her for the first time, and that's going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to that because I know that we're going to have a good time, and she's just great people. So anyway, yeah, the cheap shipping to Canada. There's going to have to be some big changes with the postal service to Canada. Now, I'll give you a quick story. When I used to give away stuff on Twitter periodically. I'd give stuff away before the show. I mean, I would just kind of give away patches and I gave away a couple of coffee cups and stuff. And somebody ended up winning, and they won from Canada. I can't remember the name of the city, but they went up there. They won up in Canada, and they messaged me, and they got a big fat bill of about $50 for a coffee cup, and they ended up waiving it. But I was like, well, that's it. I can't send any more stuff to Canada because that's ridiculous to have a coffee cup selling for that they have to pay the postal service up there $50 for them to get. So that's the only problem. And I'm hoping that that's going to get ironed out with the postal service, with this trade, all these trade agreements and stuff. And I really hope it will. Caroline Mason from Memphis, I'd love that. I would really love to have her on. I know. Golly, what's her name? I know her last name is Justice. I can't remember her first name, and I've communicated with her several times. That's the only one from Memphis that I can think of that I know. And that's Miss Justice. I just can't remember her first name off the top of my head, but I've communicated with her several times. And most of those people, I think Mullins is still around. I think Mullins is still on homicide, as a matter of fact. And I don't know for sure, but I think he's still on homicide. He would be great as well. I love Caroline Mason. Caroline Mason is promoted up through the ranks, and she's way up there. I think she's a lieutenant colonel or something. As a matter of fact, and one of the other people from Miami that I'll just mention real quick that I would love to have on here is Irvins Ford. And Irvins Ford, he actually promoted, I think he's a deputy chief or something like that in, I don't know where, an agency down there in Southern Florida. I'd love to have him on. And I'm working on it. I'm working on all these different people from the various cities and stuff. And I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to get people like that on here. If you have any ideas, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, you got to tell them. You got to tell me what you're thinking. Some of the people that people have suggested to me, and I'm not just saying about tonight, I'm just talking about in general. I have to like them. Like I said, I have to be personally impressed with them, and it has to be somebody that I think was going to bring something to the table here that's really going to, be impressive. I'll tell you another guest that I'm going to have on. He is coming on. I won't mention his name. I'll save that for later. But it's a deputy that basically got ran over by a boat and nearly lost his legs. And he's got a true story of it's just incredible. Oh, I got to check my private message. Hang on a minute. I'm getting told to check it. Okay, let's do it. Let's do this. We're gonna bring him on right now. And welcome to Billy Queen.
Hey, Jason.
There's my friend. Well, hey, I get it because the technological. I've been talking about just various things, but I did already do your bio. And so with that said, I'll tell you what. Let's start off, and I want to show this quick YouTube video. If Amanda can throw that up there real quick, just to kind of acclimate people to who you are.
Okay.
Billy Queen grew up in Greensboro and got his first job as a High Point police officer in the early 70s. A nice job, but it wasn't the ATF. So Billy updated his look, got that job with alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and went where he could find plenty of all three: the world of outlaw motorcycle gangs.
No one before me, and even after me, no one has ever been inside an outlaw motorcycle gang for 2 years like that. Nobody.
In March of 1998, Billy left his family behind and went to see what he could find out about the East Los Angeles Mongols.
It's like we own California! Yeah.
They were widely considered the most criminal and vicious of all the gangs. This is what they did to a couple of guys who just looked at them the wrong way one night at a boxing match.
I hadn't been in prison with them. I didn't grow up with them. One day I showed up.
And the gang quickly took a liking to Billy. They asked him to become a prospect, apply to be a member, so to speak, a process the gang took seriously. He had to fill out this application, telling the gang where he went to school, where he worked, friends and family he might have in law enforcement, even a criminal history. The gang then had a private detective check it all out. The ATF placed agents at Billy's schools in Guilford County to back up his stories. He was about to become a Mongol if he could pass one last test. Could he handle a gun? The classroom was a secluded orange grove north of Los Angeles.
They semicircled me. They all got their guns out, loaded their guns up. These guys were drinking beer. They were snorting cocaine and methamphetamine. I knew they were high.
One gang member suspected that Billy was a cop.
And the National Sergeant at Arms came up to me, he stood in my face, and he started hollering at me. "How long was your academy, Billy?" And I looked at him and I was stunned. And he looked at me in the eye. He said, "So if I put a bullet in the back of your head, nobody's going to know where to start looking for you, huh?" And I said, yeah, you're right. The only thing that I can do, I just bluffed them as far as I could bluff them. And if they had made me, they knew that I was a cop, they were going to shoot me in the back in that field. There was nothing I could do about it.
Miraculously, Billy escaped that and the time another guy tried to kill him with this knife.
During the investigation, when I wanted to say, we got enough, I've had enough, something else would occur. They'd kill somebody, or they'd rob someplace, or there'd be a big drug deal that was coming down. And so I'd push it for another 2 weeks.
And 2 weeks melted into 2 years. Billy earned all the rings and even became vice president of his 350-member Mongols chapter. With the help of surveillance tape like this one, showing the Mongols doing a drug deal at the funeral of one of their own, Billy put 53 Mongols in jail for everything from drug trafficking to murder. A wild ride that Billy turned into a book called Under and Alone. Mel Gibson liked the story so much, he turned it into a movie script that Gibson plans to star in as Billy. The book and movie have given Billy a little financial security. After 2 years with the Mongols, Billy lost any physical security he may have had.
I'll have to look over my shoulder for the rest of my life. If I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have done it. See, it needed to be done, but it didn't need to be done by somebody that had a family.
Man, you're a real legend, Billy, and I appreciate you being here. I met you first in Virginia, and I was sitting next to a guy, and a guy goes, "Hey, do you know who that is?" he was sitting in the front table. And actually, I thought, and no offense, Billy, I thought you were just like one of those old guys that just comes around and, and that's been retired. You know what I mean? And I was like, and he's sitting in the very front in the middle. And I saw him sitting over there, and he came up and said very kind things to me after I'd spoke. And I said, no, who is that? And he goes, that's Billy Queen. And I was like, I've heard of him. Well, who was it? And he starts telling me. I was like, I know who he is. Yeah. And then I knew the story. And so I walked over to Billy and I said, hey, Billy, why don't you come on over here and sit by me? And so he did. And so I got to know him there, and I was very, very impressed with you. So thank you for being here, and thank you for going through that stressful moment of trying to get on here. I know that wasn't fun.
Well, you know what? Thanks for having me. You know, it's good to be here with you. It'll be good to be with you in the next few days.
Yes, it will be. We're going to have a great time, and I'm definitely going to owe you a couple of beers for having to go through what you just went through, buddy, for sure. So anyway, let me tell you. You joined a municipal. You served in the military, of course. Mm-hmm. Then after that, you ended up as a municipal cop. And I wanted to jump into kind of the ATF days and so forth. You started off on the Border Patrol, and I'd heard you say something that was really, really hard. Tell us just briefly about that.
Well, I've been to a lot of different law enforcement classes and stuff, but Border Patrol was probably the hardest school I've been through. I mean, you could leave out a comma answering a question, and they'd count it wrong. And it's very physical. But what washed a lot of people out was you had to learn how to speak and read, write Spanish. So for just a little gringo guy from Greensboro, North Carolina, that was a little difficult. Yeah. But I made it through, and the whole school was really quite difficult. They wash out a lot of people, and that's really too bad. But as far as all the schools go, ATF included, as far as the military goes, it was pretty tough. But thing about it, when I was a Border Patrol agent, you could really be an agent. You were really out there chasing the illegals down when I was, and you know, if we caught them at 4:00 in the afternoon, by 6:00, they were going to be back in Mexico. Mm-hmm. Hardly the way that it is now. Well, with Trump in there, it is getting back to that now. It is getting back to that. It's kind of refreshing to see that.
Yeah, it is. I'm excited to see what the future holds with respect to some changes that they're going to make as far as getting some of these people moved back. So then what made your decision to change over to ATF? Was it because your dad was ATF?
Yeah, my dad was ATF, and the reason I went with the Border Patrol was because they were the only federal agency that was hiring at that time. And everybody said, you got to get in a gun toter position, and Border Patrol was a gun toter position, and it's easier to transfer over if you do that. So I did it, and I'm glad that I did it. The experience was great. You know, I learned how to speak Spanish, and so it was very, very worthwhile. I was able to use a lot of it later on in my career with ATF, because I worked all kinds of operations, you know, besides the regular gun and drug operations. I did a lot of undercover work and mostly hate groups and anti-government groups like that, besides the gun toter seller and dope selling people and organizations out there. That was really an eye opener for me, working the hate groups. I worked the skinheads out in California, the Ontario skinheads out there. I worked the West Coast Nazis out there. I worked the National Alliance, and that is an entirely separate and different and distressing case that I got involved with the National Alliance, because Timothy McVeigh blew up the federal building in Oklahoma when I was in with the National Alliance, and we really had a good idea that something was going to happen. And without getting into it, Janet Reno at the time was running the show. It was the attorney general. And unfortunately for us and everybody else working federal intelligence cases, she shut them all down, all of them, to include the National Alliance, just before Timothy McVeigh blew the Murrow building sky high.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know all the ins and outs. I've heard you talk about that a little bit, that the National Alliance was a lot different than the traditional KKK, meaning they were a lot more organized, right? Or something along those lines.
Very sophisticated. William Pierce, the guy that founded the National Alliance, he was a doctor, a PhD, and a PhD in something like, if I'm not mistaken, physics. So he wasn't a dummy at all, but he created a heck of a organization out in West Virginia. They had a 350-acre compound out there. They had their own printing agency out there, and they were all over the United States.
Yeah.
The Ku Klux Klan, I worked them out in North Carolina, worked them out in California, and they were pitiful. The Ontario skinheads were a younger group, but they were very violent. And they threatened their neighborhood that they were in. They were a serious violent threat, but not much further than the Ontario area. But they hurt people out there, and they did some crazy, crazy stuff. Yeah, we were able to take. Yeah, go ahead.
How did you end up even getting into the undercover? I mean, what was it that, because it's not every agent with the ATF is doing undercover stuff, right?
No. Early on in my career with ATF, because I had been in the military, there was an organization out there in LA that was selling gun parts. And somebody had come to the ATF and they said, they're selling complete M60 machine guns. And the case agent in that case came to me and said, Billy, can you go in this organization, see if you can buy all the gun parts to put a complete M60 together? Because I humped that 60 in Vietnam. So I did. I went in and they had barrels of, big wooden barrels full of parts. And I went sifting through, pull out barrels here, pull out a receiver here, pull out springs here, I pulled out everything that you needed to put together a complete M60 machine gun. And so I gathered up all my parts and I took them back to the case agent, turned them over to him, put the machine gun together. He asked me to go back in and see if I could buy another one, and I did. And resulted in a search warrant, went in and seized a bunch of machine guns in LA there. And then after that happened, it was like somebody wanted an undercover op with a military background. Then they were calling, hey, Billy, can you do this one? Hey, Billy, can you do this one? And that led to other stuff. Because I was from North Carolina, I still had a little bit of an accent from there. And so I could talk that racist crap. Hey, I'm from the South, I hate these people and stuff. And groups would accept me in. Ku Klux Klan, and they were really pitiful out there in Los Angeles. I forget the guy's name. You might know him. He ran for office out there. He headed up the Ku Klux Klan.
I heard you mention his name on another show, and I don't remember it right now. But when you said it, when he was said, because he won the primary.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He won the primary. And when I went out there, I thought, holy cow, the KKK must be a big deal out here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But I found that out right quick. They were really pitiful. They were really pitiful. The meeting that I went to with this guy, there was me, there was a confidential informant that actually got me in, and there was only 3 other guys there. And after about 45 minutes, I said, when's everybody else getting here? And Metzger
That's
was
right.
his name.
That's right.
Metzger.
Yep.
He looked at me and said, hey, this is it. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I went back to my office and wrote my reports up. They weren't even worth looking at out there in LA. It wasn't long after that. They all went out, burned a cross in somebody's yard. They got caught and they all went to jail.
All right. And so after that, it led you to, well, actually, there was some kind of a deal where there was just a handful of you that were in a room. And basically it was like, yeah, there's 200. Where is everybody? What was that? How did that go?
Yeah. Where is everybody? And Metzger looked at me and said, "This is it." And I said to myself, of course, "You got to be kidding me. This is all there is to the Ku Klux Klan out in Los Angeles. They weren't even worth looking at." And so we didn't. Just shut it down. But the Ontario skinheads now, they were a bunch of young, violent punks out in Ontario, California, and they were hurting people. They were really hurting people. They did things that were just disgusting. They would go out and catch little kittens in the neighborhood, take them back to their house, and throw them over the fence into their backyard where they had pit bulls just to watch them kill the little kittens and stuff. And I'd stand there and say, these are some really sick people. These are young. When I say young, people in their late teens and 20s, and they're out running around the neighborhood looking for people to beat up and catch kittens and stuff. They were sick. They were really sick.
Well, I'll tell you. And so that led you ultimately, after that operation was done, eventually you ended up getting asked to go undercover to try to penetrate the Mongols. And tell us how that started and how that went about.
Yeah, I did. But I did work a lot of other undercover operations, some of the most sophisticated undercover operations the United States government's ever done. But I had an interest in the bikers. I grew up on a bike, and the first biker operation that they wanted me to work was the Hells Angels. Larry Panetta, ATF agent out of Van Nuys, had teamed up with the IRS and Ventura County Sheriff's Office, and they went after George Christie's group in Ventura. And Panetta came to me and asked me if I give a shot at riding with the Hells Angels out there. So I did. Jumped on a motorcycle, rode into Chatsworth, California, if you know where that is, just north of LA, and started hanging out at pardon me if I get too explicit here, a titty bar in Chatsworth where the Hells Angels were hanging out. And that's how you got to start. You go to these places, and that you could shoot pool in that place and watch the girls dance, take their clothes off, stuff, and hang out with the Angels. And that's what I was doing, gathering information, because I wasn't getting very much, because you really got to get in. It's like when I started with with the Mongols. I'm sorry. Until they accept you as a full patch, the information that you gather is really going to be limited. And when you're just hanging around, like I was hanging around with the Hells Angels, you're not going to really learn anything. You're going to see what's going on if they beat people up, and you might catch them with a gun. Of course, you're not going to bust anybody hanging around with them like that. If they come up with a gun or dope or something like that, ultimately, you want to take down the group. So you're not in there looking to take down an individual. I didn't do that with the Hells Angels. I certainly didn't do that with the Mongols. It took more than 2 years to gather the information that we needed to really hurt the Mongols. And it would have taken that long or longer to hurt the Hells Angels. But I had what it took to stand with them and convince them that I was somebody just like them, just like these guys. But it's a long process.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It takes
and the difference between you guys and what, I worked undercover for a couple of years and it wasn't anything like what you did, Billy. I mean, the fact of the matter is, although I had a pretty good look, Amanda, throw that picture up that I just sent your way. I did work undercover for. No, that's not me, but I looked close. I worked undercover for a couple of years, and the difference between, for like us, for instance, yeah, I sent it to your Facebook, but the difference between us and you guys is you really lived the part. I mean, kind of like the Joe Pistone. I mean, and those other guys, and you're living it. You're living that life, and that's just something that I just don't think exists on city departments, really.
Yeah, you truly are. Most people that work undercover operations, they're complete. Who's that?
That's me.
Lord.
I know that was me. I could have probably swept a floor, or they would have probably let me in maybe in the clubhouse. I don't know. All right, you can take that ugly person off. But that's what I was working. That's what I was working undercover. You know what I mean? But
sure.
Sure. So you veered from the Hells Angels, and then you end up getting pointed in the direction of the Mongols. And what made that happen?
Right. Well, like I said, I started hanging out in the areas where the Mongols hang out. And there's no such thing as going up to a Mongol or a Hells Angels or any other outlaw biker and say, boy, I sure would like to be a member of your group. That's just asking for trouble. And the Mongols, they might just take you out back and just whip you just for doing that. They have got to come to you after they look at you and say, why don't you ride around with us for a little bit? And when that happens, you become a hang around. You're not a prospect. They're just looking at you and want to take a little bit better look at you. That particular picture right there, I'm a full patched Mongol right there. I'm an officer in the gang in that picture. But it's a slow process. You've got to gain their confidence. And I hung out in the bars, or ratty old white trash bars. And I could say this too, the Mongols are a Latino gang, but the Latinos and ratty old white people got along pretty good up in Tujunga, California. But I ended up getting into a fight one night with a drunk guy over a pool table. And I held my own. And there were some Mongols there that night, and they liked it. Barroom brawls like that is just straight up entertainment. So I stood toe to toe with this guy in the bar, and I won that fight. He was drunk on his butt and stuff. But after that, it wasn't long. The Mongols came up to me, said, "Hey, Billy, why don't you go ride with us down here to another place?" And when that happened, I became a hang-around, an official hang-around. At that point, they were looking at me and trying to figure me out. And I did what I had to do. But early on, I could see the violence that was involved with this group. They were assaulting people that shouldn't have been assaulted. I didn't understand it. As a matter of fact, there was a guy named Rancid. He just decked a dude out in front of the place one night where we hung out, and for no reason, it just kind of hit me. I was like, "Wow, man, what'd you do that for?" And Rancid said, "I don't like that son of a bitch." I don't like him. He just knocked him down on the sidewalk. But anyway, I went to the United States Attorney's office early on, and I asked them for some guidance. I said, "Look, these guys are hurting people. They're beating people up. They're selling dope out on the streets and stuff. They got guns and stuff. Help me. If I'm going to get in, they're going to expect me to be beating people like everybody else in the club is beating people. How far can I go? What can I do? Give me some guidance." Yeah. And the two assistant United States attorneys were sitting on the other side of the desk doing this. Nah.
Yeah.
So I made my own line in the sand, Jason, early on, was murder and rape. I wasn't going to participate in any rapes. I certainly wasn't going to kill for the club. But when I got to the point where I thought I might very well be able to get in, I mean, as a full pass member, well, I was going to do what I had to do. And I mean, I'll make it clear to you and to everybody else, there's no such thing as really playing by the rules. Like, law enforcement agencies and the ones that you work for. I'm sure that you had some guidance about, oh yeah, you can do this, but you can't do that. You can do this. But in reality, if you're not just like them, Jason, they're going to see right through you. They're going to, there's no such thing as part-time or just weekend stuff, or they're going to beat people up. They're going to roll with the dope and stuff, and you're not doing it. They're going to see right through you. You're going to have to be just like them, or you're not going to get in. And so I made that my line in the sand. Certainly not going to kill anybody for the club. I'm not going to rape any women. Right. But Jason, I did what I had to do to get that full patch.
Yeah, I tell you what, I had a couple of times where, man, I've been asked before, because my undercover stuff is primarily narcotics, and people have asked me, well, what would you have done if you had to smoke crack or something? And I'm like, well, if I had a gun to my head, I guess I'm smoking crack tonight. I mean,
well, that's true.
I hope not, and I never had to do any of that. But golly, there were some tense moments. Nothing like what you dealt with, for sure. But
the dope and the violence is everywhere. The dope and the violence is everywhere, and the women that hung out with those guys and stuff are just as bad as the guys are. I mean, with everything, with the sex, with the violence, with backing the play, they're 100% in.
Well, some of the women I deal with, man, they're worse than the guys, to tell you the truth. They're vicious, and they'll hold it. They'll keep it 100 for the group. They won't talk at all. Hard to get them to come around. And then again, they can also be the weak link too. So you get into this thing. You finally get to become a full. I mean, how long did it take you to become an actual? Did you officially? You're wearing the prospect patch, and were you doing that too, and how long was it?
You go from that hang around stage to the prospect stage, and hanging around. I mean, you're drinking beer with these guys, you're riding around with them and stuff. It wasn't so bad. You're trying to make an impression, but you're not having to beat people up. They're certainly not letting you in on any secrets or anything. But when you put on that prospect patch, that lower rocker, you become their property, and your whole world changes, because now you're going to do whatever they tell you to do. And it could be anything from just cleaning guys' bikes up, lighting cigarettes, to actually murdering somebody. And we had to be ready for that. And like I said, that line in the sand was murder. I wasn't going to kill anybody for the club. But they were killing people. They had murdered people before I got in. They murdered people while I was in. They murdered people after I was out. And to include police. After I got out, they killed a Pomona police officer. Before I got in, they killed a Hawthorne police officer. So they will kill you.
Yeah.
And while I was in, fortunately for me, when I was prospecting, I had one incident where I was defending my chapter president, and the guy pulled a knife, and he went after me with the knife. And I told the sergeant at arms with the Mongols to shoot him, kill him, shoot him. I was hollering at him to shoot him. The guy was trying to stab me, and I'm ducking and dodging and running. I'm going around in a circle, and the guy won't quit. And I'm yelling for Rocky, the sergeant at arms, to kill him. Shoot him, Rocky, kill him. As far as I was concerned, the case was over with. I'm going to let this guy kill me. But there were several other Mongols that were there, and they were able to circle the guy, get him to quit swinging a knife at me. And they took the knife from him, and they let him go, which was, I mean, that made me mad because he just tried to kill me. I wanted a piece of his ass, but they let him go. But they came up to me, they gave me the knife and said, Billy, we told him he's going to come up and get his knife. It was a nice big Bowie knife. He's going to come up and get it Thursday. And when he comes up there, Billy, you're going to stab him. And I was so mad. My heart was just pounding and I was shaking. And at first I thought, God, man, I'll stab that dude. I'll stab him, you know. And then I was thinking, hey, ain't no way the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to go for that, or ATF, you know. So we really thought, man, you know what, the case is over with. They're expecting you to kill this guy when he comes up, and you can't do that. But fortunately, everybody that was at that bar were people going up to him saying, are you nuts? That guy you just tried to stab is a damn prospect for the Mongols, and he was defending the president of the San Fernando Valley chapter. They're going to kill you. Mm-hmm. When you go up there to get your knife, they're going to kill you. And so he left town and didn't see him again. So
good.
Yeah, case stayed alive. Yeah.
Good for both of you. So from that point, is that at that moment is when they brought you in there and basically brought you into the room? And
no, that got me my center patch. I certainly didn't get my full rocker for that, but it got me a long way because the chapter president thought I took that knife for him. Mm-hmm. In reality, I was just trying to stay alive. You know, I wasn't taking a knife for anybody. But they thought, hey, he stepped up, buddy. He stepped up. And I lived through that one, and it got me my center patch. But you're still a prospect.
And tell me what that center patch. Throw up the vest picture, Amanda, real quick. Tell us. I know it's like it looks like a genie, but what is that center patch actually?
Well, that's Genghis Khan. That's Genghis Khan on that motorcycle.
No, it's the one with the back. I think there's a picture of him with the back patch. It says Mongols and then California. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's Genghis Khan on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, you start out with a very lower rocker that just says California on it. And then after a while, they have to vote on it. Everybody in the chapter votes on whether you earn that center patch or not. Well, when I took that knife that night for my chapter president, got me that center patch. So I got that pretty quick. It would probably take me another month or two to get that center patch, but I just lucked out on that. And then you know, it was months later before I got the full patch, the top patch that said Mongols. But so it took months. It took months and months to get it. Like maybe it took me 6-7 months to get the full patch, prospecting, running my tail off, and having that idiot Red Dog put a gun to my head, threaten me.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because that's an interesting. That's a moment in time where you really thought you were going to die.
I had resigned myself. I had gotten myself into a position I couldn't get out of, and if they were going to kill me that evening, they were going to kill me. There was nothing I could do about it. They took me up to Central California, and I thought, now this is really odd. You know, I'm going out to show them that I can shoot, that I got a gun, and here a lot of firing ranges around Los Angeles, all kinds of them. But they took me up an hour and a half, 2 hours drive north to SinCal, Porterville, to shoot. And first of all, that didn't make any sense. And then they didn't take me to a gun range up there. They took me out in the middle of nowhere into an abandoned orange grove. And every minute that went by, it's going through my head about what is going on here. Why are we doing this? And They got me out in the middle of that orange grove where it opened up and people were dumping trash and stuff. And we all got out of the cars and stuff, and they semi-circled me, and Red Dog starts accusing me of being a cop. And at that point, there was nothing I could do. I mean, I asked Red Dog, man, why are you pushing me? Why are you doing this? Why are you saying this? I ain't no freaking cop. And then he put the gun to my head and said, who knows you're up here with the Mongols? I said, nobody knows I'm up here. Who'd you tell that you were coming up here? I didn't tell anybody I was coming up here. Why are you saying this stuff? And then he just said, put the gun to my head and said, so if I put a bullet in the back of your head, nobody's going to know where to start looking for you. And what can you say? That's right, Red Dog. Except I don't know if my voice was stuttering or what, but there was nothing I could do. If they were going to kill me, they were going to kill me right there. Yeah. And I didn't know. And Red Dog pointed his gun out where a bunch of trash was and stuff, and he said, go out there and set some targets up for us. So I turned my back to all those armed Mongols. And I thought, I'll walk out here, but I fully expected them to shoot me in the back. Well, there was nothing that I could do. I ran some scenarios through my head, and none of them meant anything. If they were going to kill me, they were going to kill me. And that was miserable. They didn't. I set up some targets, and when I walked back, Red Dog raised his gun up probably 4 or 5 feet from my head and cranked off a round. Bam. And then everybody else started shooting. Boom, 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 boom. And I was a little bit numb at that point. I just resigned myself. They were going to shoot me. I was going to die. But I realized when I was walking back and he cranked that round off by my head and stuff that they weren't going to kill me.
Yeah.
They pushed me as far as they could push me to see what would happen. And but it was miserable.
Now, the normal day of I'm so lucky that I not only have I got to see you speak once, but I'm going to get to see you speak again. And if you really want to know the story of this, ladies and gentlemen, you got to check out his book. And his book tells the whole story. I mean, it's a fascinating read. And so, and like I told them earlier, Billy, I actually have a copy of it that you were gracious enough to sign for me, which I cherish this. It's very cool to have this. So you're there, and while you're there, at some point in time, well, actually, what do they do in the daytime? How do they even survive? That's what I'm kind of curious about. And I've heard you talk about it, but how in the heck do they even pay the bills? They have to have a job, right?
Every now and then somebody would get a job. Like Domingo, he had 2 or 3 jobs probably while I was in for that 2 years. He drove a wrecker for a little while. He drove like a box truck for a while. I think that's the only 2 jobs that he had. At that time, my chapter up there, guys are selling dope, stealing motorcycles, and extorting money from people. That's how they existed. I don't recall any of the guys in the San Fernando Valley chapter having a real job, except Domingo did have a couple times. Record driver, driving a box truck, but it didn't last long. Guys were selling dope, stealing motorcycles, extorting people, whatever they had to do to get by. Now, Rancid was a tattoo artist, and he was a good tattoo artist. But Rancid only tattooed people. He just worked enough to get by. And I don't really see Rancid selling dope. He participated in extortions with everybody else. up there, and some of them just straight up armed robberies.
And this is what I love about it is you took advantage of this opportunity to do something with your life as a job. And so what did you tell them that you were doing, and what were you doing in the meantime? What were you doing?
I told them I had to come up with something where they couldn't trick me up on it. And so I told them I was buying and selling avionics equipment from airplanes and stuff. And at the same time, because they don't start moving until 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, they're sleeping all day long. So I really didn't have anything to do all day long. So I actually went up and enrolled in a pilot course, get my airplane pilot's license. And so I told them, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm buying and selling avionics equipment for aircraft and stuff. And I actually had somebody that was backing my story. And I would take Mongols with me every now and then, go pick up radio equipment and stuff and drop it off at different places and stuff. And I'd get paid, and I'd slip them some money. So my job absolutely looked legitimate. And that worked for the entire time that I was in there. They thought that I was dealing in avionics equipment.
And you became a pilot.
And I did. I didn't have anything to do during the daytime. I wasn't going to sit around my undercover pad all day until 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock rolled around. So yeah, I enrolled and took pilots out. Got my pilot's license. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so you have a family at this point. And how is this working for all of that?
It didn't work, Jason. I ended up losing everything. I ended up losing my family. My kids were 9 and 10 years old. I'd work in all kinds of undercover operations, but it never really interfered with my family. But on this one, the deeper I got, the more dangerous that it got. And the longer I was in, the worse I looked. My hair was like really getting long. My beard was long, and I was braiding it. It made me look even worse. And if I tried to go to school, PTA meetings or stuff like that, I was ostracized. And I would watch the parents and the teachers. They didn't want anything to do with me. And I was looking at them, and I could see that was reflecting on my children. I finally got to the point where I didn't go anymore. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go to the baseball games. Coaches didn't want anything to do with me. The other parents didn't want anything to do with me. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. And I didn't have so much of a problem with that, except it reflected on my children. But one day, I went and picked up my children, took them to the Pomona swap meet out in Pomona, California. And I ended up running into Mongols when I had my 2 kids with me. And they were 9 and 10 years old. I was just lucky enough. My kids were looking at some toys, and I was able to go down and high five with the Mongols and stuff and talk to them about what I had seen at the swap meet, motorcycle parts and stuff like that. And I told them, hey guys, you know what? I've been here since 5 o'clock this morning and stuff. I'm heading home. You guys need to go check out that motorcycle parts though, buddy. And high five, did the Mongol handshake, turned around and walked away. And I was able to get my kids' attention to get them to follow me without the Mongols seeing it. That was the last time I was ever out with my children. And I knew it was too dangerous at that point to go anywhere. Yeah. And I wasn't able to go see friends. I wasn't able to go see ATF agents, cops, anybody. If I wanted companionship, then I had to go hook up with Mongols.
Yeah, that brings me to another point that I wanted to really talk about And I appreciate you being, and I know you speak about this stuff, and you're very, very candid. And you lost your mother,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that this is the part of your story to me. It just really, really, it hurt my heart. But then I also could, man, I felt what you were talking. This is the part of your story that absolutely is fascinating to me. So talk about that, where your mother dies in North Carolina, and you go to the
Yeah.
group and you tell them.
Well, I had been running 24/7 with the gang at that point. No time out, no time out, no time off. I'm just completely running as a Mongol. When my mama died, I called time out. I told ATF, my mama's died, I'm going home. And I told the Mongols, my mama died and I'm going home, guys. And got on a plane, flew back to North Carolina, and buried my mother. It was very emotional. And I went back to Los Angeles, met up with the case agent, with the ATF, the guy that was doing all the technical stuff and all. Nobody said a word to me. No word came down from ATF anywhere. Sorry about your mama. I got back on the motorcycle when I rode into Evil's house. And I went up to the door, parked my bike in the front yard, and knocked on the door. And Evil came to the door. I reached out to give Evil the Mongol handshake, and he grabbed me. And he put a big bear hug on me, and he held me, and he said, I love you, Billy. I love you. And I'm sorry about your mama. And when he said that, I could feel something inside of me take hold. I was stunned. He turned around and walked back inside. I followed him back in, and I sat down on the couch, and I heard another motorcycle pull up. And there's a big old young guy named JR. And I got up to give JR the Mongol handshake, and JR grabbed me, and he put his arms around me, and he hugged me, and he held me. And he said, Billy, I'm sorry about your mama, buddy. I love you. And Jason, I felt it. When that second guy did that, something completely consumed me. And I watched them both as they walked back into Evil's house, and I sat there. I had kind of lost it right there. I was very emotional about my mama, and the Mongols showed me that love, and they told me how sorry they were about my mama. And ATF hadn't said a word. And when the next guy came in and the next guy, it played out over and over. And every time that it did, I got a little deeper emotionally into it. And when I say that, it got to be confusing. I got on the motorcycle with those guys, and I rode into the event that we were going to, and I had one Mongol after another hugging me and holding me and telling me that they loved me. And I tell you what, Jason, at one point, I wanted to be Billy St. John. I didn't want to be Billy Queen. I didn't want to testify against these guys.
Yeah.
I felt the love, Jason. I felt it. And it hurt. And the only way I was able to seem to deal with it is I started drinking. I drank myself into a stupor. I go, what in the hell are you doing? And I finally passed out, went back to the room and passed out. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, Mongols came in and they're waking me up, shaking me. Billy, get up. Can you take a shakedown? And I'm like, what? They had grabbed a couple of women and they raped them. And now we're all outside on our knees with the hands on top of our heads with the police SWAT teams with the shotguns to our backs. And they're on my knees, and it was like getting hit in the face with a wet squirrel. It was like, I can't kill for this club. I'm not going to rape women for this club. I can't do that. It kind of brought me back to Billy Queen, who I was, but I spent that night, buddy, not knowing who the hell I was or not knowing who I really wanted to be.
Yeah.
Uh,
Common theme. I mean, you with Donnie Brasco, Joe Pistone playing Donnie Brasco. I mean, I think he was kind of getting to the point where he really was living that life to the point where he had love for these guys. Same
Yeah.
thing, Dan. I don't know if it's his real name or not, but Dan Saxon from Southern Arizona. When he was infiltrating that gang, at least in the movie, you know who I'm talking about, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, same thing where he was, he really was into
Well,
it,
Jason, you get into situations. It's a violent world with the Mongols, and the whole time I was in, we were at war with the Hell's Angels, and we took on the Hell's Angels time after time after time. We took them on mostly in their territory. When we went out to Laughlin, that's a Hell's Angel run. That's not a Mongol run. And out there, we were grossly outnumbered. And I found myself in a situation out there. I knew if I got out alive, it wasn't going to be because of the cops coming in and saving me. It was going to be because I got out because of my Mongol brothers at that time.
Are you talking about the incident at the Laughlin Hotel? The big.
Well, that's a really good example of what ended up happening. But that's kind of a long story because we knew when we went in to confront the Hell's Angels, we were armed to the gills, and they knew it. So if they wanted to take us on, there were going to be a lot of dead people. Mm-hmm. And we did that for 3 years. That's one of the things that the Mongols will do. They're going to go into a situation like that. They're going to be armed. Now, they're not stupid enough to put those patches on and put guns underneath them because they know the cops are going to jam them. They don't carry dope and guns and stuff when they're running around with those patches on them. They're not that stupid.
Yeah.
They'll send people in before they get there with those patches on. They'll dress them down. And those guys that are dressed down, those Mongols, they're not wearing the colors, buddy. They're not carrying a gun. They're carrying 3 or 4 guns. And when the crap hits the fan, buddy, the guns come out. They just start passing them out. And that's the way they operate. And the Hells Angels knew that, and that's the way they were able to get away with so much out there. But the incident that everybody knows about out there, the Hells Angels actually took it to the Mongols. See, the Mongols took it to the Hells Angels the whole time that I was there, and they knew they were bringing in guns. So the Angels thought, well, we'll take it to the Mongols before they get their guns, and they did, and that's what happened. Unfortunately for the Hells Angels, they lost 3 that day. 3 killed that day, and they stabbed my buddy Bronson to death with the Mongols. And I know it's kind of funny to hear that, my buddy Bronson.
Well, I mean, listen, I can see where you would. I bet you still to this day. I mean, you probably miss some of those guys. Really, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what that's like for you, but is there some of them that you just really, you're like, man, I wish I knew what was going on with him.
I had a lot of respect for Roger Penny because I'm a Vietnam veteran, and Roger Penny's a Vietnam veteran, and I don't think he lost sight of that. And I don't think that he ever saw me as a rat. And in reality, because I was reading what was being put on the web and stuff, Billy was a rat. He was a brother that turned on him. Well, I wasn't. I was never anything but an ATF agent. I just beat them at their game. I got
stop there. Stop right there, Billy, because this is what I want you to mention. This thing gets to a point where what was it that made it stop? And you were either having to get out or they were going to pull the plug on this thing. And tell me kind of how they found, or tell everybody how they ended up finding out what happened.
Well, in reality, it had gotten to the second year. We had already done second year. We're going into the third year. And they had killed people. They had raped women. And I had been involved in multiple armed robberies with them. And I knew I could start feeling it. I could feel it. Something was going to happen. I knew it. And at that 2-year point, I went to John Sconey, the case agent, and said, look, I can't do it anymore. I've lost everything. My kids are gone. My family's gone. I don't have any friends out here. I got nothing. I'm living this life. I got nothing. These guys if they find out who I am, they're going to kill me. If I run into some Hell's Angels by myself, they're going to kill me. If I run into Vagos out here by myself, they're going to kill me. And the cops, they ain't treat me like a friend. I'm a gangster to them. Yeah, if I run into the cops, I got to take the crap that they're going to deal out to me. So I'm by myself, and I know it. I can feel it. I'm going to end up in a deadly situation where I'm going to have to kill them, and they're going to have to kill me. I can feel it, and I told them I can't do it anymore. 2 years has gone by. Can't do it anymore. But it took 2 more months to get the indictments done, to get the search warrants done. And you know how that goes. When you start indicting people, you're going to take your information before a grand jury. You got people out there that's learning about this.
Yeah.
Every day that went by, I walked in looking at those Mongols the way that they were looking at me. Did they find out something? Every day I didn't want to get back on that motorcycle, but I did for those 2 more months until
Not to mention, you don't know who may be a friendly, because they exist. Just to the listener, there's people out there that aren't to be trusted, but we don't know who all of those people are. And man, that's scary, really scary.
Yeah, that was scary. That was way unnerving. Yeah.
So they end up hitting this. They end up hitting all these warrants and stuff. And if memory serves, they started pointing fingers and thinking that they were figuring out who the person was.
Oh, when it actually went down, the day that it actually went down, I started getting phone calls. And by that time, I had a cell phone, and so I started getting calls when it was all going down. Hey, Billy, you okay? Are you okay? You hear what's going on? You got to get rid of your shit, buddy. If you got anything that you got holding, buddy, you got to get rid of. The cops are coming. Yeah, I hear. And that happened several times with several Mongols and stuff. And I was on my way out of town, and I got a call from a guy by the name of Top Hat. And Top Hat was out in Florida. And he said, Billy, we know who did it. Billy, we know who rolled over on us. And I was waiting for him to say, we're going to kill you. But he didn't. He said, it's that son of a bitch. It's that preacher down in South Bay. He rolled on us. And I was like, what? Yeah, preacher down in South Bay. He rolled us. They're on their way down there to kill him now. And I'm like, Top Hat, do you know what you're talking about? Hell yeah, I know what I'm talking about. They are on their way down to kill him.
Why him? What was he actually a member, and why him?
Yeah, he was a member. Yeah, he was a full pass member down in South Bay. And I didn't hang out with them South Bay guys. I mean, I knew preacher. I had gone to several functions with him, and I never suspected him of anything, but apparently some of them people down there suspected him, like Red Dog suspected me. But apparently it was to the point where they were just sure, and they were on their way down to kill him. And I couldn't talk any sense into Top Hat. I finally told him, I said, you listen to me, Top Hat, and you listen good. My name's not Billy St. John. My name's Billy Queen. I'm a special agent with the Bureau of ATF. It was me. And the phone went dead. Ploop. And then just a few minutes later, started getting these phone calls. Yo, Billy, you okay, brother? Where are you?
Yeah,
Oh
where
yeah,
are
I'm
you,
home.
buddy?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah, yeah. And I got to finally, they were telling me how they're going to kill me. See,
Uh-huh.
you're only going to listen to that just so much, and you're just going to hang up, don't answer the phone anymore.
Yeah, and then so they got you the heck out of there, and then they put you in a place where you were alone again.
Again, yep. They took my family. They moved my family to Miami, Florida, and they put me in Plano, Texas. And Jason, I was telling myself, I was getting burned out. I was telling myself, you're going to go back to being an agent again. You're going to go back to being a dad again. You're going to go back to a normal life. But it never happened, Jason. Never happened.
Yeah.
They moved my family away. They put me out there. You know what? The only thing I had was my dog. And I was alone in Plano, Texas, transcribing tapes for the next court date. I sat out there until they called and said, "Hey, Billy, this guy's going to court. You got to testify on this. Drag out the tapes and stuff and transcribe tapes." And I sat out there by myself with my dog. And I got on a plane, fly back to L.A., testify against some people and stuff, and go hide out in Texas.
All the time knowing that at any point in time somebody could try to shoot you or kill you while you're going there to testify at any point.
Well, they had SWAT teams, either SWAT teams or ATF SRT teams. They picked me up at the airport. They never left my side. Everywhere I went, I had a SWAT team around me. I go in the back doors with at the county courthouses or federal courthouses, and they escort me into court. I sat down, I testified, then they escorted me out of town.
Any close calls? Any close calls after all of this stuff went down to where maybe you ran across anybody over the years? Or?
And they were going to kill me. I knew if they could find me, they were going to kill me. I knew that, and I wasn't going to do anything to get killed. And I couldn't protest too much about my family, because they just said, "Hey, we want to keep everybody alive." And I never wanted to do anything where I put my family in jeopardy. Unfortunately, that happened.
Yeah.
But they hid, I hid, and kids grew up, and I'm still here.
Now, one of the bright parts of this story, and Tyler Burns, who's one of the people that's listening in here, he's a first responder from up in Indiana. One of the questions he asked is he wanted to know what kind of bike you had, and I'd like to, and I want you to share with him not only what kind of bike you had, but what happened to that bike. That's kind of a good part of the story.
Well, I started out on an ATF bike, an FLHTC, but the whole time that bike right there, I told them guys, "Man, I sure would like to have a Springer, buddy. I love those Springers." And one day, a bunch of motorcycles pulled up in front of my place, my undercover pad, and I could hear somebody yelling, "Billy, Billy, come out!" And they stole this Springer. It was like brand new. They stole it. "Here's your bike, Billy." So you know how that goes. Where I let people know, you got to replace the frame, you got to replace the cases because they got the numbers on them. That's how the cops can tell you, your bike's stolen. So you go buy a set of cases for the motor, and you go buy aftermarket frame, take the bike completely apart, and then you put it back together, and you got yourself an $18,000-$20,000 motorcycle for $1,500, maybe $2,000. What a deal. So we did that. And ATF, I'd tell ATF, "Hey man, I need to buy a gasket kit to put this motor back together. I need to buy some aftermarket stuff. I get some bigger valves, and I need this, and I need this, and I want to need an SS carburetor and stuff." And I had ATF spending money on this motorcycle. And I said, "Got to get this thing painted. I can't be riding it around,
Yeah.
same color it was when they stole it and stuff. So I put this super slick paint job on it. I forgot how much I paid for it and stuff. But the bottom line is, and what I didn't pay for it, ATF paid for it. But we used that bike in all the stolen motorcycle stuff that we did with the state guys. And then after all the cases were adjudicated, that bike went back to the insurance company that paid off on it, and it was Farmers Insurance. 2 years later, I got a call, and they ran me down through ATF and said, next time you're in Los Angeles, stop by out here. We want to talk to you. This is Farmers Insurance. And so next time I was out there, I did. I stopped by, and they took me to a certain section, and they opened up this door, and there's the bike. And they said, here, it's yours. And
Yeah, that's cool.
Gave it to me. And they gave it to me. Yep. And, if I would have known that was going to happen, I'd have put another $5,000 worth of ATF money into it.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So do you still have that to this day?
I'm sitting out in my garage.
Oh, good. Good.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So listen, man, I can't thank you enough, honestly. You speak, you're willing to speak. So if people want to reach out to you, they can get a hold of you. I think do you have a website? Am I correct on that? Or how do they get in touch with you if they needed to get in touch with you to speak?
They can't really do that. I mean, if you could imagine that, I have Mongols trying to get in touch with me.
Of course.
But if they wanted to, there are some people in ATF, and ATF's they're not going to give me up. You're really not going to be able to get in touch with me. But if you are in law enforcement now, law enforcement guys, I've still got friends that are with ATF.
In the law enforcement world, we could figure it out. We can figure it out.
Yeah, that's exactly. You know what I could say? You know what? Contact Jason. He can get in touch with me.
And I'll tell you what, Billy's a dynamic speaker, and I will say this: when you came in there, he basically he takes you into that world, and it's something to see. It's absolutely, I love it. It really puts you in. You give him a glimpse as to what the life is like. You live the part, and that really is something to see. So, like I said, if you're in law enforcement and that's something that maybe you think that Billy'd be a good fit for you, then reach out. You can certainly reach out to me anytime. I consider him a friend now, and he's definitely he may not consider that, but he's definitely somebody that I look at as like a sensei.
buy me a beer.
Oh, I'm going to buy you more. I'm going to buy you more. I'm going to buy you more than one. Trust me. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, buy his book. I'm telling you, you'll love this book. I've read it. It's great. And it's something that you need to check out and get it. It goes to a good cause, and Billy put a lot of work into that and stuff, and it's just a really good deal.
Jason, thank you, buddy. Thank you.
No, listen,
so
I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you, ladies and gentlemen. He's very candid. I appreciate him coming on here, and he's telling the real deal. And there's so much more to this story, but we only have such a little time. Next week, there's not going to be a live episode. And Billy, you didn't know this, but this thing is watched throughout the world. And I'll tell you something. I just saw a bandito driving down the street, but a few days ago. And I can't help but, he knows I'm a cop, but I can't help but just look over there at him. I want to stop him so bad, just to go, hey man, tell me about what this is about. And I know I'm not going to get any responses that I'm going to like. I can already tell you. But it's just that fascinating world. It's the unknown, and you broke into that, and that's something that's fascinating to me. Ladies and gentlemen, next week we're going to have a rerun. Ashley Berg, extraordinary crime scene detective. It's a rerun, but check it out if you didn't get a chance to see it. Check it out. The week after that, Kathy Kleiner, one of Ted Bundy's victims from the Chi Omega sorority house. She's a friend of mine. Moving story, fascinating story. You can watch that again. And then we'll come back April the 11th. And when we get back April the 11th, we're going to have Freddie Ponce, who is a retired homicide detective from Miami, old school First 48. And he's fascinating. You're going to love that. So until then, like and subscribe. Go to my Detective Jason White YouTube page to catch this and many more great episodes. Thanks a lot, Billy. You're the bomb. I'm going to see you in a couple of days, and I look forward to it. We'll
Yeah,
talk
you will.
further
You owe
then.
me a beer.
I owe you more than one. Trust me, you're going to get more than one, and we're going to talk and have a lot of laughs. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here. Thank you for the patience, and we'll catch you the next time. Take us out, Amanda.